I'm following my friends through a crowd of hot and sweaty bodies, all jamming to the persistent thud of techno music, when suddenly I realize that I've stopped moving. As I watch the last of my friends disappear into the crowd of strangers, I recognize the feel of hands on my body. I freeze in fear as someone has grabbed and starts groping me right there on the dance floor. Surrounded by thousands of people enjoying their night, I am living a nightmare. The year is 2004. I am 15 years old. This is my first ever music festival, and I have nowhere to go. I don't need medical services. I can't find security, and I'm separated from my friends. I needed a safe space. What happened to me is unfortunately not rare and not at all uncommon, and not something that we left back in 2004. In fact, in a survey taken last year, 43% of female festival goers under the age of 40 reported experiencing unwanted sexual behavior at a music festival. Today, I am dedicated to preventing what happened to me from happening to anyone else. And the way that I do that is by traveling all over the world, setting up safe spaces at music festivals where we can provide sexual assault support services to victims and prevent sexual assault from happening to would-be victims by giving them a place to go. Now, what is a safe space? Well, they can look like a lot of different things depending on the context, but at a music festival, a safe space is literally a location. In fact, it is characterized by three important criteria. It is protected by boundaries, defined by trust, and empowered by creativity. Now, at the festival, the safe space literally has walls and a door, boundaries that protect it and protect its inhabitants from the rest of the environment. Trust. A safe space is staffed with volunteers who are available 24 hours a day, trustworthy volunteers who are there to provide support to someone who has recently experienced a traumatic event. And creativity. Despite being limited by the festival itself, we are able to get as creative as possible, empowering that victim, that assault survivor, to come up with a solution that works for them, limited only by the time and the space itself. So as I've been traveling around setting up these safe spaces, I came to realize that these three criteria are not just what creates safety, they're also the foundation for pleasure. You see, as a sex coach, I spend a lot of my time thinking about how people can enjoy sex more. And these three things actually lay the foundation for a great sex life. So I began toying with the idea of teaching people how to create a safe space within themselves, how to become a safe space that they take with them everywhere, not just to prevent harm from happening, but also to create that foundation for pleasure. So how do we become a safe space? Number one, we must have boundaries. Boundaries is just a way of saying what I do and do not allow other people to do with me, how I allow others to engage with me. For example, I really love it when you hug and kiss me when we're at home, but I don't love it when you hug and kiss me when we're out with my friends. Boundaries can also include a plan for what you will do if someone oversteps yours. Like, if you continue to overstep my boundaries by hugging and kissing me in public, I'll have to end our relationship. You see, when someone sets boundaries, it's not about limiting the relationship they're engaging in. It's actually about making it more successful. Boundaries are a tool that someone uses to let someone know how to interact with them in the hopes of having a pleasurable relationship. Boundaries are a bit like out of bounds in a game. So we're playing a game, and if one of us steps out of bounds, there's going to be a traumatic experience. So we want to avoid that as much as possible. If we don't know where out of bounds is, then we have to stay pretty safe, right? Because we don't want to cause trauma. But when we know right where the boundary is, we can walk all the way up to it without going over. And it gives us the entire court to play with, empowering that relationship and making it more pleasurable. To be a safe space for ourselves, we must have trust. And because we don't all carry around a team of mental health professionals with us everywhere, we have to become trustworthy for ourselves. How do we do that? Well, often trusting yourself comes down to listening to that little voice inside, your gut, your intuition, the thing that tells you whether or not something is for you or not for you. You want to or you don't. Trust here is very similar to trust between you and a partner. You see, the more that you listen to this little voice and act in accordance with what it's asking you to do or not to do, the louder that it speaks, the more that you can trust it and it can trust you. And the same is true with a partner. When you state something like, I'm really not ready for sex, but I would like to continue making out, if you can respect that boundary, and they do, that little piece of trust enables your relationship to go a little bit deeper as time goes on. And finally, a safe space is empowered by creativity. Sex and relationships are one of the most amazing canvases upon which to be creative, but often we're limited by the scripts that were offered to us in porn, in romantic comedies, even by our friends and our families. And when we're limited by these scripts, we fail to really get a sense of what it is that we truly want. And if we can't know what it is that we truly want, we certainly can't get what we really want. For example, I'm not ready for sex, but I would love it if you would just stroke my hair and kiss my neck until I fall asleep. The thing about living through a traumatic sexual experience is that when our brain is re-triggered in a similar environment, even with safety, even with a partner that is safe for us, the parts of our brain that can be creative shut down, and the parts that are trying to protect us engage. So if you have a partnership in which boundaries and trust are established, you can actually become more creative about what it is that you want, what it is that would feel the most pleasurable for you. So now we have the 3 criteria of a safe space, but we're still not to a pleasurable sexual life yet, because there's an important piece that's missing, and that is consent. Now, it is worth celebrating that many people today have an idea of what consent is. In fact, many young people are taught consent in school. But consent is a really complex subject, and it's often taught in black and white, when in reality, there's a lot of gray area. And because it's so complicated, consent is often boiled down to an idea of permission. Permission to do something or not to do something. And by show of hands, who here has ever given permission to something that they later regretted? Yeah, me too. And who here has ever given consent to something that later they felt icky about? Same. Because consent is just a piece of this puzzle. But when we treat it as if it is the key to a pleasurable sexual experience, we're setting everyone up for failure. We're setting us up for lackluster sex at best and traumatic experiences at worst. So where does consent fit in? After the establishment of safety, after you are a safe space for yourself, then you are actually able to engage in giving and receiving and hearing and creating consent in a meaningful way. Because if consent is not founded in safety, then you're saying yes or no or giving permission in a space that is unstable. And on top of consent is where pleasure is built. Think about it like this. A sexual experience with another person is sort of like creating a painting together, a work of art that the two of you have agreed that you are teaming up to build. First, you start with the canvas itself. Those are your boundaries. This is where we are going to paint and where we are not. And if you've ever gotten paint on a couch or a wall or the floor where you weren't supposed to, you know how important boundaries are. So you set your boundaries, and then you trust that the person that you're painting with will be able to work with you and respect those boundaries. Then you use the tools of consent to lay out the black, white, and gray sketch that is the shape of this particular sexual experience. So where are we going to go within our boundaries that we have set? And then, after all of that is set and in place and stable, that is where we can add color. And when it comes to color, there's no right or wrong choices, there's just preferences. But we are able to create the most beautiful expression, the expression of those two people that actually represents the highest attainment of their pleasure, both individually and together, after we have the foundation in place. So, I ask that you take what you've learned here today and practice, and practice, and practice, and practice, because this isn't the kind of thing that you're going to get perfect, least of all when you first start. And that's okay. Because in order to become a safe space for yourself and for the people near you, your partners, you have to have the three things that create safety first: boundaries, trust, creativity. Establishing these things as the strong basis upon which you can give and receive consent is how you get to an amazing and pleasurable sexual life, which is what I wish for all of you. Thank you.